You've seen the postcards, the perfect beaches, the vibrant nightlife, the endless sunshine. You've heard the pitch. Come to Florida. No state income tax. A paradise for freedom and growth. And in the last few years, it seems like everyone listened. Hundreds of thousands of people flocked to the Sunshine State. A massive historic wave of migration. And all that growth needs a place to live. The demand for housing exploded. Prices for homes, they went vertical. Rent? Through the stratosphere. It was the Florida dream, but with a price tag that started to look like a nightmare for the people who actually live and work here. We're talking teachers, nurses, firefighters, and service workers finding themselves priced out of the very communities they serve. The math just stopped working. The market was on fire, but it was burning the foundations of the state's own workforce. Everyone knew it was a crisis. Local governments in cities like Miami, Orlando, and Tampa tried to put out the fires. They held hearings. They debated zoning. They proposed small-scale solutions. But the problem just got bigger. The supply of affordable housing was a running joke. And then from Tallahassee, Governor DeSantis and the state legislature decided to do something. Not just something small, not a tweak. They decided to drop a bomb. What if I told you the state government just effectively erased decades of local zoning rules in every major city? What if I told you that in any commercial or industrial area, think that old strip mall on the corner or that low-rise office park you drive by, a developer could now, by right, build a massive apartment high-rise? And what if I told you your local mayor, your city commission, can't do a single thing to stop it? This isn't a hypothetical. This is the reality in Florida right now. It's called the Live Local Act, and it is, without question, the single most aggressive and controversial housing policy in the country. It's a radical, free market-driven experiment that has completely rewritten the rules of development, and its shockwaves are just beginning to hit the market. So what does this law actually do? Let's get into the nuts and bolts, because this is where the genius, or the disaster, truly lies, depending on who you ask. The law, first passed in 2023 and then strengthened with amendments, is a classic carrot and stick approach. But in this case, the stick is a sledgehammer and the carrot is a truckload of gold. The stick is what's called zoning preemption. This is the part that has local governments absolutely furious. The law says that a developer can build a multifamily rental project in any area zoned for commercial, industrial, or mixed use. They don't have to ask the city for permission. They don't have to go to public hearings. If the project meets the law's requirements, the city must approve it administratively. It also overrides all local height and density restrictions. How tall can they build? The law says they can build to the tallest height allowed within a 1-mile radius. So if there's a 30-story condo a mile away from that Kmart parking lot, the developer can now propose a 30-story apartment building in that parking lot, and the city just has to say yes. Think about the implications of that. The entire landscape of Florida cities could be reshaped almost overnight. That quiet commercial street, that industrial park, they are all now effectively high-density residential zones. So why would the state do this? The argument from proponents, including Governor DeSantis, is simple: supply, supply, supply. The thinking is that for decades, local governments and their not-in-my-backyard or NIMBY zoning rules have artificially restricted the housing supply. They've made it impossible to build the dense workforce housing that people need, favoring sprawling, expensive single-family homes. The only way to break this logjam, they argue, was to take the power away from local officials. Let the free market build, and if we build enough, prices will have to come down. But developers don't just build for fun. They need to make money. And that's where the carrot comes in. And it is a very big carrot. The Live Local Act provides massive, almost irresistible tax incentives. If a developer builds a new project with at least 70 units and sets aside at least 40% of those units as affordable, they can get up to 100% exemption on property taxes for those affordable units. In some cases, a 75% exemption on the entire project's value. This is a multi-million-dollar incentive. It's the kind of math that makes developers stop everything they're doing and start hunting for old strip malls to buy. Okay, so we have a mechanism to build fast by bypassing local rules and a massive financial incentive to do it. But it's all built on one single word: affordable. And this is where the entire debate gets really complicated. What does affordable mean to you? You're probably thinking of housing for people on low incomes, maybe public housing or Section 8. That is not what this law means. The Live Local Act defines affordable as housing for people making up to 120% of the area median income, or AMI. Let's be very clear about what that means. In Miami-Dade County, 100% of the AMI is already over $74,000 for a single person. 120% of that is nearly $90,000. In Palm Beach County, 120% AMI for one person is over $91,000. Under the law, affordable rent is capped at 30% of that income. So in Miami, a single person making $90,000 could pay up to $2,250 a month for an affordable studio or one bedroom. Did you catch that? The affordable housing being built by this program could be a $2,200 a month studio. Critics, and there are many, point to this and say the Live Local Act isn't an affordable housing bill at all. They call it a workforce housing bill, or more cynically, a giveaway to developers. They argue that this helps a nurse manager or a new lawyer, but does absolutely nothing for the barista, the hotel worker, or the senior on a fixed income, the people who are actually in crisis. They fear this will just incentivize developers to build luxury-adjacent apartments with a few affordable units that are still far too expensive for most. Proponents fire back. So what? They say workforce housing is the missing middle. We need housing for teachers and cops, not just the very poor. And by adding thousands of any new units to the market, it creates downward pressure on all rents. More supply, any supply, is good. This battle is raging. But while everyone is fighting over the Live Local Act, there's another, quieter crisis that DeSantis' policies have been tackling. And frankly, this one might be even more important to your wallet. I'm talking about property insurance. For years, the Florida housing market had a cancer. It didn't matter what your mortgage payment was, because your property insurance bill was doubling, tripling, or your policy was just canceled altogether. Insurers were fleeing the state, bleeding billions of dollars. Why? A combination of massive storms and lawsuits. Florida had 9% of the nation's property insurance claims, but 79% of the nation's property insurance lawsuits. A system of assignment of benefits and one-way attorney fees created a feeding frenzy for contractors and lawyers, all paid for by massive premium hikes on every single homeowner. You cannot have a stable housing market if people cannot insure their homes. It's the bedrock. So in a series of special sessions, the DeSantis administration and the legislature passed sweeping and, again, controversial reforms. They completely dismantled that old system. They eliminated one-way attorney fees. They made it harder to file frivolous lawsuits. The goal was to stop the bleeding, stabilize the market, and hopefully lure insurers back to Florida. Trial lawyers called it an assault on consumer rights. Consumer advocates worried it would make it harder for homeowners with legitimate claims to get paid. Proponents called it a necessary bitter pill to save the entire state from economic collapse. So, did it work? Well, the results are now coming in. And for the first time in nearly a decade, the news is cautiously optimistic. In 2024 and 2025, the Florida Office of Insurance Regulation reported that the market is finally stabilizing. Several new insurance companies have actually entered the Florida market, and while premiums haven't exactly crashed, multiple companies, for the first time in memory, have filed for 0% rate increases or even small rate decreases. This is a seismic shift. For a new homebuyer, this is the difference between an affordable monthly payment and a foreclosure. It makes the entire housing market more viable. So you have this two-pronged attack. One policy, the insurance reform, is designed to stop the bleeding and stabilize the cost for current owners. The other policy, the Live Local Act, is a radical injection of new supply aimed at bringing down costs for renters and future buyers. And there's one more piece to this puzzle. The state is also putting its money where its mouth is, funding programs like the Hometown Heroes program with hundreds of millions of dollars. This program gives down payment and closing cost assistance as zero-interest loans to a massive list of full-time essential workers. It's another attempt to help that missing middle get a foothold in the market. So you have a policy to fix insurance, a policy to build new apartments, and a policy to give buyers down payment cash. It sounds like a comprehensive plan, a bold, aggressive strategy to tackle the housing crisis from every possible angle. So, what's the problem? Well, the future of the Live Local Act and the very skyline of Florida is now going to be decided in a courtroom. Cities across the state are in open revolt. Miami Beach, Hollywood, Bal Harbour, they are suing the state of Florida. Their argument is that the Live Local Act is unconstitutional, that it violates the Home Rule doctrine in the state's constitution, which gives local governments the power to, well, govern themselves. They say Tallahassee, in a giveaway to developers, has stripped them of their most basic right, the right to decide what their own community looks like. The most famous example? The iconic Clevelander Hotel on Ocean Drive in Miami Beach. The owners, citing the Live Local Act, proposed tearing down the Art Deco landmark and building a massive high-rise. The city was horrified. They saw it as the end of Miami Beach's historic character, all thanks to a state law they never asked for. This is the central conflict: the state's urgent, top-down demand for more housing now versus the local community's desire to protect its character, its history, and its control. So, how will DeSantis' new policies affect the Florida housing market? The insurance reforms already have. They seem to have stopped a death spiral, making home ownership possible again, even if it's still expensive. The Hometown Heroes program is putting thousands of families into homes. But the Live Local Act, that's the real earthquake. In the best-case scenario, proponents see a future Florida 5 years from now, where thousands of new high-quality rental units have flooded the market. They see the supply finally catching up with demand, rents stabilizing, and workforce professionals, the teachers, the nurses, the tech workers, finally being able to live near their jobs. They see a victory for the free market and a lesson in what happens when you cut bureaucratic red tape. In the worst-case scenario, critics see a future of chaos. They see historic neighborhoods torn down, replaced by soulless steel and glass high-rises. They see a massive wave of gentrification as affordable $2,200 a month studios displace truly low-income residents. They see local communities with no power, their downtowns and main streets handed over to developers who, after their 30-year affordability requirement expires, will be sitting on a gold mine. The truth is, this is one of the largest real-time economic experiments in American history. The entire development landscape of the nation's third-largest state has been fundamentally altered. The battle isn't just about housing. It's about control, community, and the very definition of affordable. One thing is certain: the Florida of 2030 will look drastically different than the Florida of today. The question is, will it be a paradise built for everyone, or just a paradise built for the highest bidder? This story is far from over, and the consequences will be felt for decades. Are you in Florida? Are you a renter, a homeowner, or someone thinking of moving? What are you seeing on the ground? Let us know in the comments below, and make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching.